we will have the political leader for the COP, because of course it's silly season, right? So we need to bring all the political leaders and we need to have conversations so that we can have the most informed vote come general election 2025. And to end it though, we're going to have our resident attorney at law, Kyle Taklal Singh. He should be, you guys are familiar with him by now. Every time something happens legally in the country, we bring him. And but we do actually have someone that I consider a giant in the legal fraternity. I'm surprised, Mr. Hammersmith, that you don't have SC behind your name by now. But, you know, I'm going to ask him to weigh in on the situation that happened. I mean, it was a bit of a comedy fest yesterday. But before we get into that, I just want to say, Mr. Hammersmith, a little secret, because I am a bit of a fan of yours. So when I was at, I had a seat at the table in UNC back when, and they asked us, to nominate who we would want as president, because of course the opposition would have someone that they would put forward, for debate and whatnot. And I did present your name. I do think you'd be an excellent president, maybe a good prime minister too, So yeah, I just wanted you to know that I have admired you from quite a while now. So before we get into your hat as a political leader, maybe I can just use your hat as an attorney at law, because we had a bit of confusion yesterday. I mean, it started, I did not really like the way that the opposition leader brought it across. I thought that it was a bit of rage baiting. There was some misinformation, or should I say, it's like a convenient leaving out of information. So there was this kind of headline that, your pension is at risk, your pension is at risk. And persons didn't really quite understand that there's an NIS pension and then there's a senior citizens grant. And the NIS pension is the one that we contribute to. And we're legally, obligated. The government will give us our money and whatnot. But then there's something called the senior citizens pension, which is a grant, and that falls, under welfare. And you always, it's never been an automatic something, you always had to go before a committee that will approve it. You had to show bank statements. You had to prove that you were in need, and there is a cap. So anyone earning more than $5,000 a month cannot, access this grant. So, I spent the better half of yesterday trying to explain to people. I did a TikTok video trying to explain that this is not your NIS pension. This is not what the government is saying. And it has always been means tested. Maybe the 25,000, is a bit arbitrary, but it's always been means tested. Lo and behold, the Attorney General and, Senator Donna Cox has a media conference, and the Attorney General says, I was not in the country. This is not the bill that we'd intended to put before the Parliament, and this statement, this line, this clause was inserted, and he has no idea how it got inserted. So I call it a comedy fest, but it is a serious issue that a bill could be laid before Parliament that the Attorney General has never seen before. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, certainly it was an oops moment, if you like. One more time on this occasion. But it means that the communications, that here you're doing something that makes a difference in people's lives. The onus really was on the government to explain this bill even before it arrived in Parliament, because people were, if you were receiving this grant, you would be directly affected. Tomorrow morning, you could have no money. And, it is a failure of communications. I don't know how this oops moment could have occurred and you inserted this language about 25,000 in the bill by accident. And, the problem with that, Marsha, is how many other accidents are happening that we don't know about? Are we rudderless? Is somebody not paying attention? And that's, it's the other things that this may signal that get through that weren't intended. I do recall, I agitated on behalf of the Law Association for some bill they wanted to introduce some time ago. And I talked to people, they said, we don't understand what you're saying, it's too technical. And I said, well, if an engineer told you this bridge was unsafe, would you want to understand the technical reasons why? I'm telling you, you can't have this legislation. It will be havoc. Ultimately, what happened, it was passed, we put it through Parliament, it was never proclaimed. Because somebody, somewhere along the line, had a little sense. So it's on the statute books, but just never proclaimed. It would have caused havoc to everyone in Trinidad and Tobago. So it would have been a new land law. I don't attack anybody, but nonetheless, it was a difficult moment when there's just a failure of communication, and we have to get better at that.
Yeah. Well, do you think that they intended? Do you think that? I don't want to say the Attorney General is telling the truth or not, but it seems as though he's been put in some hot water.
Certainly, I think he's not the only one. Something is not streamlined. When I was Senate President, I did try to introduce. I don't know if you recognize how these things happen, Marsha. We create law in Trinidad and Tobago in the most haphazard fashion. So yes, they prepare a bill, it goes through various stages before it comes to the Parliament. But nobody can track any of the changes. And then you'll hear somebody stand up in Parliament and say, Section 3, line 4, insert XYZ. Can you visualize what that means? That really should not take place in a committee of the whole house, as we call it. 5 people maybe are interested in the nitty-gritty part of it. That should be a special committee. We should have a screen, and the bill should appear page by page on screen. When somebody wants to make an amendment, there's somebody type in, and you can see the amendment in red. No, I don't like that. Let's move the language about. And we had gone quite a distance towards achieving it because it's special software. And we looked at, I think, Nova Scotia it was. And we were at the point of introducing this when, the end of the term had come, and it never happened. And it seems that nobody wants to improve how we create legislation. But it is absurd in the 21st century to be creating legislation the way we do. And I've advocated, as I say, when I had that seat, to try and I think that we had actually identified the software program we wanted. It reached that point, and as I say, the term came to an end. And
so you've carried me right into my next point. For those who do not know your political career, I may not know before 2010, but in 2010, which would have put you somewhat as part of the People's Partnership, you were the president of the Senate from between 2010 and 2015. I mean, to be the president of the Senate, certainly you have to have a good relationship with the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister at the time would have been Kamla Persad-Bissessar. So there is some relationship, or was some relationship, with the UNC. But then in 2014, you would have started speaking about constitutional reform. Particularly, you would have spoken about, more than 20% of the population not being represented, calling for proportional representation. I remember you saying, you can't just laugh off third parties. And then in 2015, you had this nota, none of the above, a call to spoil the ballot. I want to tell you, in 2015, I did not vote. I heard your call and I took your call. I could not place my vote on any of the above. So maybe you can, what went wrong? Why didn't you stay in the UNC? Why didn't you build? What was that call about? That none of the above call?
Yeah. So none of the above actually is in India. You have that as a category, none of the above, because it's telling people that none of these representatives who've been promoted for my constituency, I think makes a grade. I did something somewhat different. Of course, there was, I did have some ads, and I was really saying there are key pieces of legislation, and if none of these parties are prepared to introduce this legislation, then choose none of the above. So you would send that signal. So I thought there should be a fair voting system. I thought that we should have procurement legislation implemented. I thought we should have finance party legislation. And there were key elements that I said, if none of these parties are prepared to commit that when they get into governance, they would introduce these things, without which I don't think, and I think I was right, Trinidad's not going anywhere, because those are crucial underlying legislation, pieces of legislation that are transformative and changes the politics. And of course, a fair voting system was also part of that.
When you say fair voting system, that's closer to the proportional representation.
Well, yes. So I used fair because I didn't want to identify. I mean, the ideal, I think, was what Sir Hugh Woodin had said in terms of a mixed form of proportional representation. In terms of a single house, we mimic what they do in the UK Parliament with 600 representatives. I mean, we're not that size. We're not 60 million people. We're 1.5. New Zealand recognized that in the early 90s. That New Zealand is about 4.4 million people back then, anyhow. And so they introduced, they in fact, I wouldn't say copy, but they did what was recommended by Sir Hugh Woodin in that Woodin Commission. They had a mixed form of proportional representation. They had a single house. And this was triggered when 12% of the population went unrepresented. So here in Trinidad, we almost double that, with 23% actually. If you go back to 1981, the numbers change, the raw numbers change, but the percentage remained the same in 81, in 2007, in 1991. They haven't gone away, they haven't left the country. It's just that, well, we have no representation and we can't break through. So what I have recommended, which can happen with a simple majority, is, and it is more proportional if you like, is preferential voting. In preferential voting, nobody can win a constituency unless they have 51%, or rather more than 50%, I should say. Because very often we have minority governments. We don't accept that, because if there were three parties, no party earns over 50%. In preferential voting, you count the numbers, you choose, this is my first choice, second choice, third choice. And that system allows you to bring up, when you calculate it, if whoever gets more than 51% at the end of the day. And that becomes a little fairer, a little more proportional. In fact, my understanding is the PNM have it for their political leader appointment. They never introduce it because they didn't have to. Everybody passed a 50% plus test, or those who just didn't make the grade. But it's a system used in Ireland, it's used in Scotland, it's used in some states in the United States. It's a system that allows a certain amount of proportionality and changes the dynamics. But of course, and it only takes a simple majority. That is
what caught my attention just now. That's what caught my attention just now, because of course a lot of these proposals that we would have seen recently, because constitutional reform just came up, we had a committee, another committee. I have to say, I don't think that we're going to get any real constitutional reform in my lifetime or in your lifetime, but you seem to be the man of hope. But this one has simple majorities, so it does mean that a government can easily pass it.
You can have fixed date elections. You can have
But I think doesn't fixed state elections require 33 the
I don't
33?
think so. I think you can get, there are a number of things you can do
Okay.
that only, when you read the Constitution, I think it's section 56,
Yeah.
it says you can change anything you want in this Constitution. That's how it starts. But if you're changing these
These
sections, you
lines,
require
yes.
2/3. If you require other sections, you require 3/4.
So I think the president, because we actually had a show on that. So we went through which ones of the which recommendations, we would have needed to get a sort of NAR majority, to really change. But having said so, even some of the simple things, Keith Rowley's already said he's not accepting those recommendations. Whatever. We're not here to talk about the Constitution Committee. Kudos to you, because you've been in this for a really, really long time, and you still seem to speak with vigor, with a lot of hope. And I don't want to say hope because it feels a little bit, I'm not playing on words, but you do still seem to believe that Trinidad and Tobago can change. I'm grateful for persons like you who have stood. It's like a marathon, and you've endured with us, and I mean, you I'm sure could make a life somewhere else, but you have endured with us, and thank you for your contribution.
Sometimes in life, Marsha, you have to plant a seed. We may not necessarily see the tree that grows. We plant the seed. The Lord is responsible for blooming and blossoming, and we can fertilize it and water it. That much we can do, and that's what we're doing here now. We're planting a seed. Maybe a generation from now, I'm not around, but the seed might take root and plant and blossom. So every one of us has a duty to plant our seed. If
that would have been one of your recommendations, if I recall, adding something about our responsibility, not just the rights, exactly. not just about our rights
and duties and responsibilities, not just rights and freedoms. It's not gimme, gimme, gimme only. And as a country, the culture tends to be around that. Nobody feels that they have to contribute. And hence the reason why I recommended we need to embed that, not as a dead letter in the Constitution, but as a living thing. You have to bring it into the schools. That's where the cultural transformation takes place. And Lee Kuan Yew understood that. He looked at values. He got the country, he allowed the country to give their responses. Once they came up with values as to what best represents Singapore, in our case, what is a Trini? We want to bring that. What is the best about a Trini? We need to have that embedded in our education system. We need character education. We need a whole revolution in education where the education is to suit every student, not a system and you pour the students into it as if it's one size fits all. It doesn't happen. And 70% of our students are failing. We do nothing about it. It's an amazing story.
Yeah. There's a lot of reform that has to happen in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately.
It starts with hope, Marsha.
Let me ask you a question. It's a good plug. I'm going to ask, why didn't you stay were you ever a member of the UNC? I mean, you were the Senate president under UNC, well, a People's Partnership government. Why not stay in the UNC and maybe create a space, the UNC could be a party, not just for their base, but for that unrepresented 23%.
Well, in 2015, I did help the UNC, I think it was 2015, down in San Fernando East. I've been to many of their gatherings. I talked there. I tried to promote. I did walkabouts in San Fernando. So yes, I was participating in that. But at the end of the election, they don't seem to need you anymore. And therefore, there was no, if you can't have a voice within the organization you are in, then you might as well you be a passive voter or start your own thing.
Yeah. So you have decided to start your own thing.
I think, I think Hope has an important voice, an important contribution, that is to create a better Trinidad and Tobago, to re-engineer what we're doing right now. Because right now, we are planning for failure. And I'm saying we need to plan for success. We need to look out there and have a big picture to what we need to do in order for our people to become the best version of themselves. And we have a lot of talent out there. We're just not utilizing. I'll tell you a story. President Robinson's funeral, his body lay in state at the Parliament. His daughter came to see me. She said to me that she taught in one of the disadvantaged areas. And one of the things that happened, they decided to bring in somebody to teach software programming. All right. And she said that the kids who performed best were those who they thought were dropouts. They just caught on to this thing. And we think, everything is academia and grammar school type education, when in fact, different people have we're not allowing people to achieve their best potential. And that's a sin.
Yeah, it is. I mean, well, I homeschool. I know that you are part of a private organization where you guys do things differently. So, I mean, we obviously through our lives think that the current education system is not where it should be. Now, I know that you fight. I mean, you fight legislation. That's sort of where you will fight. I know that you believe in fixing it through constitution. I've said, I don't have the hope that you have that it's going to happen in our lifetime. But I do think that as a voter, maybe it's because I am from Diego Martin, one of the 3 Diego Martins, and I think that that 23% of the population that you speak to, they are fairly concentrated inside of Diego Martin, right? Just using the Diego Martin West figures, it's interesting when you spoke about fair representation, because if that were the case, I don't think Dr. Rowley would ever have won Diego Martin West. And people talk about it being a PNM stronghold, but he wins with 40% of the vote. He certainly has never won with 50%. On his best year, you get 10,000 out of 29,000 votes. So it means that there are 19,000 people inside of that constituency who have not voted for Keith Rowley, which is a significant number. I mean, 10 versus 19, it's short of 1,000, to make up a double, So if you talk minority leadership, that's the best example. So I do believe that there is a space, and I mean, this is something that I've been speaking about since 2020, explaining to person those numbers, because I think there is a sense, and this is where I'm going with it with you now, there is a sense that persons think that you're wasting your vote if you were to vote for a third party or you vote for an independent candidate, because there is a sense that, PNM's going to win or UNC's going to win. We only have space for 2 parties. But as I said, the numbers show differently, right? There are 19,000 votes inside of Diego Martin. UNC has never gotten more than 2,500 of those 19,000. So, I mean, you're looking at another 16,000 votes, which is a significant number of people who have never, they voted for COP actually in 2007, and in 2010. So there's a significant number of voters in those particular constituencies that I do think, a third party can come and offer representation too. And similar to Tobago, I have said that hopefully we can see the value, if the chief secretary has said that vote for, make sure and put good representation in Tobago so that we can really have a voice inside of Parliament. And I, even without constitutional reform, I do see a space where you have some of these smaller parties picking up 1 or 2 seats and almost acting similarly to the independent senator inside of the lower house. So I do think there is a space. There is a space for a political party like Hope or NTA or COP or whoever to pick up those seats where there is that large, swing voter. I'm going to call them a swing voter, unrepresented voter. I know Gary Griffith calls it the bridge constituency, the bridge voter. But I do like the term unrepresented. There are at least 16,000 unrepresented voters in Diego Martin West. And those numbers are similar for Central and Northeast, right? And I'm certain if I were to study San Fernando West, possibly St. Joseph, the marginals, you will see that the numbers are similar. But I want to, so there's Hope standalone, as a third party. And then there is...
Sorry about that, Marsha.
That's okay. So there is...
My alarm is going off.
Uh-oh. So there is Hope standalone as a party. But what we're also seeing in the news is an alliance or a coalition or a something. And we've seen 2 sets of things in the news, right? We've seen 3 sets of things in the news. A media release came out from the UNC, so the UNC is going to be meeting with these parties. I get the sense from your media release that you may have heard about it from the news before you heard about it from the UNC. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And so we saw this media release, then we saw some hands shaking, then we saw your media release come out, and then we saw that you were also meeting with the NTA. So, I want to get straight from your mouth, not black and white where and I'm going to say, Philip Alexander said, fake news. He put out something saying that the Guardian media is carrying fake news and whatnot, and they're pushing an agenda. So I want to clear the air on everything, on where is Hope at right now.
All right. So what I can tell you is Hope has been in discussion. We meet every Saturday for months now. All right. Oh. We meet a Saturday morning. We spend 3 hours bringing an alliance together. All right. We meet under the umbrella of the Progressive Alliance Network. We've been meeting.
So there's a name, Progressive Alliance.
It's not a name of a party. It's just.
But that's okay.
Sometimes you need a handle.
You do. But it means that there is some order already. Yeah. But it means that there is some order already. Yeah. I mean, you've spoken. You've said.
In fact, we're moving closer towards that. What we've moving towards, and there's a draft already. I'm presently working on a revision of that draft, where there's where you will arrive at an agreement where we work together, all 3 parties, with a similar strategy, with similar policies, with a similar vision. And of course, a lot of these things have to be worked out, but we've been, as I say, meeting for months, and we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, where the question of policy and the strategic direction that we want for Trinidad and Tobago is being, worked out, so that we come to the table, not just a simply manifesto with nice pictures and saying we're putting up this building and that building. And of course, political parties love putting up buildings, and you wonder why. They don't have to have any use necessarily, You can have a bridge to nowhere. Why not?
Well, there is a use, but I don't want to impute improper motive.
All right. So we really do have a strategy for how do we change education, a strategy or policy for how you deal with corruption, a strategy for how you deal with crime, a strategy for improving the economy, to getting foreign exchange. Those are things that are not going to happen because we wish them. They're going to be happening because they're hard policy issues that you have to tackle and implement. We like to think that, I like to think that my background has been an implementer. You don't get into law just by, not, and I'm on the commercial side, which is why perhaps you do. I don't go, I did for the first 10 years of my practice, but I'm a commercial corporate lawyer, and I've enjoyed that immensely. But it requires you to build something. Very often,
you built a school. You built a school.
Yeah, when it
And
comes
a
to you,
very successful school at that.
yeah,
So there is a track record of implementing.
Sure, you have components. Sometimes they put it up badly or whatever. You have to bring it down to the lowest common denominator and build it back up. That's the kind of thing I think that we in Hope feel that we can not just have policy, but to implement that policy. We have to cross that divide where it's just not old talk. And it's not just doing, in this country, we feel that maintenance is not important. You can't cut a ribbon because of, I maintain the building. There's no vote catching in that. So it becomes unimportant to put up a building and 20 years later, it's gone into ruin. Perhaps it's not being used. Look at our stadiums, what we've allowed to happen. It's a crying shame that we just have spent billions of dollars in Trinidad and Tobago. And yet, what do we have to show for it? And more importantly, have our people had the opportunities to thrive and succeed and to reach? Everybody has a potential built in. Are we allowing the opportunities for them to achieve that full potential, that dream, that goal that they have? Or are we just pressing everybody down to the lowest common denominator? Isn't that a tendency to what you see is supposed to raising people up? You want a hand up. You want a head start in life. You need that. And yet we seem to be just handing out fish every day and make people dependent on you. You can't grow on that.
So you said earlier that you called 3 parties. So you said we have been meeting for several months now, every Saturday. So I see regularity in it. The 3 parties, just confirm for me there.
Well, it's more than 3 parties, actually. Okay, we do have a couple civil society organizations at the table. So they're not political parties, but they're civil society. And we believe that civil society is part of the answer to Trinidad and Tobago. We have a wonderful network of NGOs and FBOs and religious organizations throughout the country. They perform the biggest network, and yet we don't use them as we should in the building up of Trinidad and Tobago. But besides civil society, we do have Hope, NTA, the National Transformation Alliance, and the Congress of the People at the table as political parties, joining, as I say, an alliance, and with the civil society backing as well, becoming not political parties. They want to do what they do.
Yes.
But they want to support a particular role for civil society in Trinidad and Tobago. Because we're not going to be able to, public servants can never go out there into the communities and touch the disadvantaged. That's not their role, but NGOs do that. And the state ought to be supporting NGOs in a bigger way, in a more, regulated way, if you like. Because yes, we need to get pay for performance. We need to, see the tangibles. You must be accountable, must be transparent. And I want performance. I just don't want to hand out money. And that becomes very important.
Okay, so this would have been happening at the time when UNC would have invited Hope to the meeting. Now, you did not attend the meeting, not because you were shrugging UNC, but simply it was a time issue.
It was a timing issue. That's correct. Yeah. Somewhere along the line, there was a mix-up about that. The concept of working with another political party is, if you like, ingrained within our network, our Progressive Alliance. So certainly we aren't shunning them. We do have a methodology. We do have a strategy in order to benefit Trinidad and Tobago at the end of the day. And you can't lay out your strategy, unfortunately, right on to the world, because then you'll undermine us, if you
Still
like.
the art of war. It's
Some
still the
things
art of war.
exactly.
Yes, it's still the art of
So
war.
you do have to be strategic about your strategy. But yes, this is going on. And
so have you had conversation with the political leader of the UNC after the fact? I mean, so I'm guessing you would have maybe sense saying,
yeah, we've
when we're starting
indicated in January we'll be prepared to get together. I'm not there to direct the UNC about how to
right. But
conduct
there's
their
been no
affairs.
conversation since.
We've
Because
opened that door
right.
to an opportunity for it. And therefore, yes, there's a response from the UNC, what one would expect to occur. But in the meantime, we conduct our business. We have control over what we can do. We don't try to control another political party. And we do think that we have a winning formula at the end of the day, because we have to do things differently. For instance, how we did it in the PP government, how COP, and I was part of that negotiation team for the COP. One of the things, we should learn from our mistakes. So we didn't get it perfect then, but we've learned a lot. And the next
what
time
are some
around,
of the things that you've learned?
Pardon?
What are some of the things that you've learned? What can we expect differently this time?
So that much I can tell you. When we went to the PP government, the underlying start to it was really an allocation of seats. And that's not the right starting point. The right starting point is, do we have a vision collectively that we feel that we can all support? Do we have policies that underlie that vision to transform the country? Do we have people that can implement those policies? That should be our focus. When you get that right, then you've had a solid foundation for going forward. If you start off by merely allocating seats and then let's think about what we're going to do,
and it's a power grab.
Fires the entire time. So we've put in a lot of work. Over the last couple of years, Hope has put in a lot of work. We've combined in an alliance with NTA and COP. We like to think we bring, there are different things that people bring to the table. So NTA have their own rare strengths that they bring to the table, COP as well. We like to think Hope has worked on policy and implementation and strategy over the last 2 years. We've talked to consultants, we've talked to the people, we've gone into, small cottage meetings and heard the people. Our format has not just been, we're here to talk down to you. Yes, we may give a presentation and allow questions to arise. So there's a back and there's a flow within our meetings that perhaps traditionally you don't find in other political meetings. And we've gained a lot of knowledge and experience because people on the ground, they may not want to be politicians, but they know what is good for their community and what would help to transform their lives and their children's and their grandchildren. And that's what you're really working for, a better Trinidad and Tobago in which all of us can thrive. And one of the things Mr. Dukaran used to say, if you recall, Trinidad will not rise unless Laventille rises. And he didn't mean Laventille the place. He meant challenged communities. We need to lift them up. We need to help them. We need to give them an opportunity. And, I explained to you that story about having that just that software ability, programming ability came natural to some people.
Yeah.
I may never get it, but that's what the modern world is about. If you don't know coding and programming, you're lost. AI is right there. I mean, it's a wonderful instrument if you understand how to use it. And so, different people have different strengths. We believe that we need in Trinidad and Tobago to have everybody raised up. And one of our approaches is to use the NGOs. Serval, just to give you one example, is that, people don't even recognize Father Jerry Pantin and Serval won what's the equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize coming out of Sweden. We herald Sweden as having the best education system in the world. And they were pointing to Serval as having the best opportunity for raising people up from disadvantaged communities. And back then, Father Jerry, I mean, I knew him well. He was my schoolmaster at school. He was in charge of sport at the time, and he was a dean, and there were a lot, and my family knew him well. But that's what he wanted when he went up to Laventille. What can we do for you? What do you want? That's the question you ask him. And then you respond in a way that helps the people. And he had from infancy up to, of course, training people. And he generally attracted the ones who've dropped out of school. And he gave them that opportunity to retrain, to have, technical ability, to gain a trade or whatever it is, that you have a particular ability for, and we can use that model, as it were, and we've allowed it to, instead of allowing it to flourish, and it requires state funding. You have to pay teachers, you have to pay principals, you have to pay this, there's the resource cost. Having a building costs money, but I think money is well spent if the outcome we have from that is that the disadvantaged communities get a hand up, a head start in life to do better than they're doing now. Instead, what we've really handed them is what? CPEP. And that's a fish a day. We need to help them to fulfill their potential. And unless we do that, Trinidad will always be floundering. It can't just be some benefiting. We need to have, a critical mass of people need to be following in the same direction. And instead, what we do, we split people apart.
But division seems to have benefited the politicians.
How can we follow a common vision if you divide, splice and dice, as they say, into, in a small segments as possible, and you use that in politics, to say, them people, don't support them or whatever.
Yeah.
We never see Trinidad and Tobago as a whole that we need to.
So I have a question for you. You've mentioned the NTA, Hope, and COP. We've recently seen Kamala Persad-Bissessar shaking hands with the PEP. I have to say that Philip Alexander is not my cup of tea. I cannot imagine you sitting next to him and y'all sharing the same brand. I'll be very honest. I'm also not hearing Michaela Pandey in the mix. Have you reached out to the PEP and Patriotic Front? Does the relationship with Philip Alexander and Kamala Persad-Bissessar now make any difference in terms of any hope for the future?
Yeah, so that's a fair question. There are some people who feel they would prefer to meet on a one-on-one basis, and they don't want to join a grouping as we've done. We think that's vital, and we need to have a common position. So there are people willing to talk to you, but they'll say to you, I want to speak to you as political leader of Hope. You and I together in a room and let's talk. but they don't want to join in a mass meeting. That's their way. It's not for me to say what they should do. So you had MSJ, you have Patriotic Front. You have what would be a Jack Warner style. I go solo. But yes, we do believe as things emerge.
So you have invited everyone, but some persons have chosen right now to, have individual conversations.
We like to have conversations with everyone.
Yeah.
We've actually met with some of that grouping. We haven't actually been able to meet with Michaela. Our reaching out to her has not been beneficial, has not resulted in anything positive. I had met already with Basdeo Pandey before.
So you weren't able to secure a meeting with Michaela thus far?
We've never had that. So.
That's fine. And so the second part of the question was the relationship between, there is some coalition or alliance or conversation or wherever they're at with Philip Alexander and the opposition leader. Does that in any way, because you're in talks with NTA, there is no love lost between Gary Griffith and Philip Alexander. Has that conversation come up? What would it look like now that UNC seems to be partnering with the PEP?
Yeah, so it's not for us as Hope, as COP, as NTA. It's not for us to tell another party who they should, have arrangements with, or who should be in their party, or what position. That's not our particular role. Philip Alexander, does have a role to play. I can understand why the UNC consider that he is good for them. I wouldn't try to imagine how that will emerge over the passage of time. But I can understand why it's there. We don't, we haven't considered Philip Alexander in our grouping for obvious reasons. You've seen that the two characters certainly couldn't blend, if that's the right word. And therefore...
Like oil and water.
Yes. It doesn't mean that ultimately, my dream is that we have a post-election coalition as opposed to the PP government was a pre-election coalition, if you like.
Okay, so you've raised something there called a post-election versus a pre-election.
Well, generally, that's what a coalition is about.
Yes,
coalitions don't happen before. You might have an accommodation before. You understand?
Right, okay, right. Because I was about to say, what we don't want is to have 5 different representatives on a ballot paper.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
So that's what you're talking about, at least to decide. So there's a common vision, because there's a policy document that you guys are working on. Will we see some version of a MOU? Where you do get to the point of, and I hear you that we shouldn't be which seat, but it should come up at some point which seat, because you don't want 3 people in St. Joseph.
Of course, yeah, that's not going to happen. That we can assure you. We understand the dynamics of that. It doesn't make sense. All right? But what you find, you asked, will we see this MOU or MOA, whichever version you want? And I can't speak, those begin with as private documents. And you say, look, neither party will make this public. We have to jointly make that decision. That's number one.
Right.
But yes, our policies, our vision, our principles, values, those are things that are available right now. If you go to hope.tt,
right, so that's fine. Yeah, and we don't need the details of it. But can we expect? And I guess you've answered it. What we cannot expect, or we should not expect, is that we will see Hope, NTA, COP, and a bunch of different parties in one constituency, and where
Right.
they're
So
like,
we're going to have an accommodation.
there will be some
That
accommodation.
goes without saying. We wouldn't have been over the last few months successfully meeting every Saturday.
Yes, of course.
Um, and
And you are
there
hoping
are
that
other people in the play that we
well,
can't.
I'm not going to ask because you are hoping that at some point, come,
Well, it's
by the
beyond
time
hoping. We are talking with other people. I'm not in a position to
and that's fine. You don't need
disclose
to
that
call, yeah,
publicly
you don't
because
need to call other
your
names.
partners can tell you, no, I don't want.
Yeah,
The timing is not right. Let's
it's
put
not
it
right,
that way.
and that's fine. But
But there are others.
the hope is that even with, so you have the Progressive Alliance, so they, so far, we can get a guarantee from them that between those three political parties, at least, we're not going to see those three competing against each other in any
That's
one
an
constituency.
absolute given.
Right. But you are hoping that we will not be seeing UNCPP, Patriotic Front, and a Progressive
that is what we
Alliance.
would like
We
to
are
achieve
hoping.
at the end of the day. But some things we can control. I can tell you
And some things you
definitively,
can't.
among
And some
the
things you
three
can't.
parties, there will be an accommodation as to what will happen when other
the rest.
parties. You have to sit down and negotiate, and sometimes these are hard negotiations, as you can imagine. But
that's where we're at right now.
The good of Trinidad and Tobago is the end product.
Yeah.
And we will do what we consider best for Trinidad and Tobago, as opposed to, if you put yourself and you put personalities first, you're bound to have clashes because we are all different people. But if your vision is Trinidad and Tobago, then in fact you understand that you have to have, and I think the starting point is not the accommodation. The accommodation is the seats. Is exactly what the COP did going in with the PP. And I take.
No, and I agree with that. I agree with that. You have to know that we have one common vision,
a policy. Who will implement it? All of those things are where we direct right now as part of our alliance. That's where we direct our attention, not the accommodation. That's the outcome.
Yes.
But the inputs need to be solid, they need to be grounded in reality, and they need to be transformative. We can't keep doing the same things over and over and expect a different result. And that's what Trinidad and Tobago has been doing. Hope likes to think of itself as the yeast, that it's just a speck within the when you're baking, but at the end of the day, what emerges is one huge loaf from which everybody can participate and be blended in.
Mr. Hamel-Smith, thank you very, very, very much. I would like to talk to you for the full 2 hours, but we're going to speak to the political leader of the COP now. I'll ask him some of the same questions. Yes, and maybe I'll speak to. I was supposed to have the political leader of MSJ last week, believe it or not, but he could not make because he did attend the meeting with the political leader of the UNC. So I do wish so it's the Progressive Alliance. What was the third?
Network. PAN is, but as I say, that's not a.
I know that's not. Yes, I know.
I don't think send a wrong message.
But
it's
just for now, I'm using it so that I don't have to say,
for purposes of.
But I do wish you
together.
Yes, I do wish your gathering, the best of luck in the future conversations with all parties involved, so that we don't see a host of. I know people are worried about voter splitting,
and that's not what we're after.
Yes.
The best time to plant a tree, Marsha, is 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
It's today.
Right. So we're here about growing. We understand the realities of Trinidad politics. And we've all learned and burnt, if you like. And so we understand better about the mechanisms, the strategies that allow for achieving
I do hope
a
good sense.
winning combination.
I do hope good sense prevails, and everyone can get on board so that we can finally see an upward trend in Trinidad's growth.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Marsha.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Have a wonderful season.
You too. Happy Christmas to all your viewers.
Hi, David. Is my second guest there yet?
Good afternoon, Marsha.
Hello. I'm told he's there.
I just saw your guest there a while, but he left. I don't know if you can send him a message to come back.
Oh, okay. Yes, because we were supposed to end with Mr. Hamel-Smith at 4:40. Let me message him quickly. Yes, he probably was waiting quite a while because we went on with Mr. Hamel-Smith for quite some time. But it's exciting news, don't you think, David? I mean, I think that I think we were all waiting on all the smaller parties to start that conversation. And I know that Mr. Hamel-Smith was very careful to say that it's not the name of a new party. But the fact that they have been meeting for months now, they have been working on their policies, working on their vision, a document, and they've gotten to the stage where they have at least named the umbrella under which they are meeting. So I do hope, because Mr. Hamel-Smith would have said that they did reach out to Michaela Pandey, and I think she has a lot of political currency. I've said before that I'm not sure that she has enough track record to be a political leader and certainly to be a prime minister. But she does have political currency. Her name holds weight in the country, and so it would be good. Hi, Mr. Sinnette. It would be good for her to come on board. So, Mr. Sinnette, thank you very, very much. Can I call you Kirt?
No problem, no problem. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm so sorry to have had you waiting, but it feels to me like it's breaking news. We were just saying, and when you were logging back on, David and I were saying that, don't mean to put pun on the word hope, but it definitely does bring some hope to the political landscape to hear that, that NTA, COP, and HOPE have been meeting with some of civil society for months now, and he was careful. I want to make sure, in case you weren't listening, but he was very careful to make sure that, it's not a new party. It's not, it's not like a name of a party, but there is an umbrella. There's a handle, where we can open the door. That's what he used, and then the name of the handle that we're using to open the door is Progressive Alliance Network, PAN. So it does make it easier than me saying NTA, COP, HOPE, Alliance, so thank you for y'all coming up with a name. So it makes it easier for us journalists to or want to be journalists in my case to speak to it. Kirt, I want to be very, very, very I don't know how else to be but honest, and I'm going to be as gentle as possible. But a lot of persons do not know who you are. I don't think that you get much media time. Don't worry about it. Neither do I. The media has their favorites. But for all intents and purposes, I think that persons may not have followed where is the Congress of the People right now. Do you guys have active members? I'm not sure. Did you participate in the 2020 general, in the 2023 local government? So first, let's start with who is Kirk Sinnette.
Okay. Good afternoon to Trinidad and Tobago and your listenership. My Kirt Sinnette is one of, I would say, if you hear the name Kirt Sinnette, you can now link it to boxing. I have been a national athlete that represented this country at its highest level. I represented even at its lowest. I was 9-time national champion for Trinidad and Tobago. Caribbean champion 4 time and voted best boxer of the tournament. I've been at the Central American and Caribbean Games CSC, a bronze medalist, a Pan Am bronze medalist as well. Represented this country as the first boxer to ever qualify for the Olympic Games for Trinidad and Tobago in 1996. And from that is my amateur career. I went on to be a professional boxer, where I was also national champion as a professional, Caribbean champion, WBA Latin American champion, WBC light heavyweight champion. That is in the Caribbean. I've done fairly well in the sports and serving my country, I would say.
So you do have a history of service to country. Thank you for that.
And I'm presently right now a boxing coach and going about, and I would be training the young male and female who would want to become boxers.
So you work with the youth. And in terms of politics, how did you get into politics? I mean, you are the interim, right? Not the official elected political leader. Interim political leader.
Okay, well, let me first let you understand this. The Congress people had made a transition, I would say, for the past 2 days, 2 or 3 days, where I had stepped down from being the political leader, I would say. Oh. Yes, I had stepped down.
All over today.
Yes. I had stepped down from being the political leader, and it has now been our beloved brother Prakash Ramada.
So Prakash Ramada is now the interim political leader of the Congress of the People?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. So
to be honest with you, I did not want to burst the bubble, but
because
now I know we had planned this interview.
Yes, I know, because now I feel would I be putting you on the spot to be asking you some of the questions that I'm asking you? And, maybe you should have told Prakash to come on board and join you, so that when I ask the questions, he can speak to the issue. Oh, Losi. Yeah. Okay, so.
But you would know that I would have been there for at least about 4 years.
Okay.
With Lonsdale Williams.
Right. I know Lonsdale very well.
Lonsdale Williams.
I'm gonna ask some questions so that maybe, because I don't want to I don't want to have you speak out of turn because I'm putting you in a position.
You're quite correct.
Yes. So if there are any questions that you cannot answer, because maybe do you have any role at all still in the COP?
Well, I must say that the Congress of the People has been the first party I ever joined, and only party that I have ever joined.
Why did you choose COP?
To be honest with you, while I was young growing up, I watched the politics, and I started getting more interested in it when I take into consideration the A&R Robinson. I think he was so well spoken as one, and I take into consideration the time he took over this country, Trinidad and Tobago, in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
How devastating our economy was at the point in time, and the type of I would say things that he needed was to put in place to ensure that our country benefited. that to me was so, it was the thing he had us to do that to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago stay alive today. A lot of people, which was also implementation of the VAT, where we were promised by many other political parties who said that they would have taken off the VAT. Now that we have become accustomed to the VAT, we recognize that the VAT was a critical element that keeps our country today alive financially. So something like that would never be removed. So, and as well, what he did with the, I don't know, to me, I came out of the union as well because I used to work at TSTT. And I was wondering what the union was thinking about at that time when the offer was made to them to at least have at least 10% ownership in state companies at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So when I take that into consideration, so imagine about 35 years later,
Mm-hmm.
the difference and the mindset that our public servants would have been having today would have been far way more advanced. They would have understand the business, how business run. They would have understand how productive they need to be to ensure that because they would have been part of the governance structure of the company and not just being the working class. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
So in taking all these into consideration, knowing that Mr. Dukran was also part of that government, Mr. Dukran,
Right.
and he would have had to make certain decisive decision under the coup.
Right.
And that is what drew me. That is what drew me to Mr. Dukran. And
oh, I'm not sure. You're stuck. Are you stuck? Hello.
Seems like he's frozen up for a while.
I'm waiting on. Oh yes. Okay. So I found out who Batman is. You can let him on. You're breaking up, Kirt.
Unmute your microphone, Kirt.
Kirt, you're muted. You're muted.
Your microphone is still muted. Seems like you're frozen again.
Kirt, you're still muted.
Seems like he's frozen again.
Uh-oh.
Okay, there he is again. Right, unmute your microphone, Kirt.
You have to unmute.
Yeah, you need to unmute your microphone.
You have to. You're seeing the mute? No, next to the camera, there's a mute button.
Yeah, next to your camera, there's a mute button. You can switch it back on.
Kirt, I have our next guest is here with us. While you work out, because you're still on mute. So I'm gonna talk to Batman. You are such a fool. You know, if you ever become prime minister, there are so many videos, public videos of us, where people will say that I am totally disrespectful to you. Just saying. Because like, I'm being asked, there's a Batman waiting on backstage. Should I bring him in? Because obviously you did not have your camera on. So I said, let me ask my next guest. Gary, wow, I feel like this show has gone, I mean, I don't know, it might go viral. I have no idea. I don't know if you were sitting on all of this. Like Kirt could have give me some warning. Maybe I could have had Mr. Ramada ask him to join us or something. But thanks, given the fact that you are on my show so often, y'all real keep secrets good. Just saying, meeting for months now, have name and thing, have policy documents and thing. And I'm so, I just said it to Kirt the same way. I mean, Hope really might be the best name, but I feel energized by what Mr. Hamel-Smith has said today. I really, really do. In fact, I have a question from the audience, and the question says, how can ordinary people like me be part of regular dialogues? Is there a meeting area? My phone, my personal phone, and it's just so weird because today we shared the live on my personal page, which I tend, I always forget, I never do and whatnot. And my phone is blowing up. People are excited. They are so excited by the news that, oh, wow, a conversation is happening. The conversation has been happening. It's been happening regularly and seems to be at a pretty developed stage. And now hearing the news that Mr. Prakash Ramada has steps back in. I mean, it's like if I could do cartwheels on air, I would. I'm speechless, Gary. Tie this up for me before Kyle comes on, because we do have to get to the boring business of the Attorney General and the comedy fest that is PNM. But it's funny because I shared the video with the Attorney General yesterday, and my head is like cut off with this Power 102 thing, because this whole show is TikTok worthy. Y'all need to cut it up and all these different breaking news. But anyways, I shared the video yesterday. I know you're looking out because you have to go and play football. Just give me 5 minutes now. I shared the whole comedy fest yesterday, and I said, what is worse than this comedy fest is the fact that on the ground, constantly, we still hear, we don't want PNM, but we don't want UNC. And that really is a very frustrating space to be in. Because if we do not present the citizens, the nation, with a viable alternative, then we're looking at a third year of PNM. And I think I'm going to have to consider migrating if that's the case. And that is where we're at. There is a real worry that we are looking at a third term for PNM simply because the UNC does not have their house in order. And it would have appeared up until today that there was nothing on the horizon. We would just have 1,000 names on the ballot and everybody gets a 20 here, 20 there. I'm so happy, Gary. I'm so happy. So one, answer the question. Now I'm finished babbling. You have a wife. I'm sure you understand what happens when we get excited. We just go on and on and on. But I hope that I'm conveying the excitement that I'm getting from my phone right now that is blowing up. And as I said, people are asking, how can they get involved? That's the question that everyone's asking right now. How can they get involved? I do hope that Michaela Pandey can be involved. I want to ask you, I'm going to ask you a hard question, not so hard, but please tell me that Philip Alexander was not invited to the table, please.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon. So what has transpired is, again, let your heart not be bothered. We have this. We understood exactly what you said, Marsha, that for the last, UNC has been in existence for 36 years. They have never won a general election or an election on their own in a 3-horse race. Anytime there's a third party or third parties, as insignificant as Ramesh Maharaj, his Team Unity party was, he got 388 votes in Tunapuna, and that cost the UNC the government from 1961 to 1818. That is how powerful and important that bridge constituency is. But we are not here to split votes. We are here to try to provide an opportunity for the floating voters, the marginal voters, the bridge constituency, the knife and fork, whatever they call us, all sort of different names. What we do decides the outcome of the election. And then when we looked at the individuals who have any leadership framework now, we're talking about a previous Senate president, a previous minister of national security and security advisor, now someone who was a previous minister of legal affairs and probably one of the most respected politicians you have in the country. And there are others as well, union movements, NGOs. So this is not just about political parties. This is a framework towards several different bodies and organizations coming together, not to beat the PNM, but with a cohesive objective to work together to transform Trinidad and Tobago. What is binding us is that transformational roadmap we have towards good governance. And that is what is going to make it work. What we saw, unfortunately, with the UNC was an attempt similar to 2010. Barry Padarat calls people turn up, and then he tried to direct them to stand up and line up for a photo op. The floating voters, they're not going to buy into that. They want to believe and know for a fact that they are going to be properly represented. So we are not here to make life difficult for UNC or anybody else. We are not here to just give them the votes of the bridge constituency to get them into government. I think my personal view is I do not think the country wants a UNC government. They would like that bridge constituency would like to be part of a government. That cannot happen if UNC demands that they have the 19 seats they presently have, and then they want the 8 marginals. Then they will do exactly what they did to the COP in 2010. So we have learned from our mistakes. Kirk Sinnette has proven to be a real patriot and a warrior. And I'm really glad Kirk has finally come out to express and expose to the country the type of patriot he has been to Trinidad and Tobago. I kept saying, Kirk, let the country be aware. I mean, when it is people in politics, whether it is you're in the military or legal, when you're involved with law or whatever, that man actually, I think there were a couple CSC games and Pan Am games. I actually was on with the contingent with Kirk. So I know him well. It has been an honor to be on the political battlefield with him. I'm not winning no ring with him. I think we are on the right track.
Gary thinks he cannot beat.
I got no ring with Kirk Sinnette. I could go on a firing range with him, but not a boxing ring. And so what the next step is?
But Gary, that speaks to the type of people that are on this table.
Correct.
Because we have a lot of persons who are very well suited for the background, and they're probably better suited for the background, but are insistent on being in the media, being in the forefront, being, you know. And so it does speak to the humility of the leadership that is at that table right now, that, you know, we have to beg him to come and let people know the work that he is doing behind the scenes. It also speaks to the fact that, you know, we didn't hear any kind of bacchanal in the COP. He came, he made an announcement. There was obviously meetings and whatnot. And I'm assuming that there was something that made you guys decide, Kirt, that Mr. Ramada would have been the better person for this particular job going into 2025. And kudos to you. You know, and Mr. Hamel-Smith would have said in his interview that this table, this PAN table, is about persons putting the country first, not putting their agenda first, not putting their personality first, not putting their needs first, but looking at what does the country need at this point in our history to stop the downward decline. You know, and I can't say enough. Kirt, thank you very much. Gary, thank you very much. You know, I don't have Mr. Hamel-Smith here, but you know, I told him thank you because he's been around for a long time, and to consistently serve Trinidad and Tobago when there are people who say, why you waste your time? Why you waste your time? And Gary, very much like you, I mean, Timothy Hamel-Smith can build a life abroad. You know, he can easily migrate and just say, done with it. and take his wonderful family and grandchildren and just go. He can, you know. And so there is a real heartfelt thank you that I am saying on behalf of those who have said previously that we ain't voting and come 2025. I didn't even, I said, I'm not even offering myself a service because what am I going to do? Toe who line? Line to toe,
But Marsha, put into your other question before we run off.
Yes.
There's one thing, however, we are not to say that our nose will be in the air, but we are very selective to ensure we have a brand that will prevent of the anything in the future that we would have seen of persons who do not have the country at heart. I am speaking about we are not in any way going to have persons who are just involved in demonizing individuals, attacking, destroying, discrediting. When you hear an individual after a lady has been burned trying to protect her children, and 24 hours later you hear him saying they should all burn with venom, and then attacking a female because she was in grief over her friend being killed and mocking how she is screaming. That is not the type of politics we want. So that is the only concern that I'm seeing with the UNC right now. I
don't know if you read the story, but the opposition leader is quoted as saying, while she does not endorse the statements of the political leader of the PEP, she does not see it affecting their relationship because she needs all hands on deck. And I have said that there are some hands that we simply do not need on deck. That is a position of desperation. I know you both, you men are sports or athletes. Champions do not just take any and everybody. Good teams, you have to try out. And I mean, your son, Gary, I'm sure you understand that. You have to try out. So it cannot be a situation where any raggedy doll from anywhere, speaking anyhow, feeling anyhow, having any vision, any mission, anything can be on deck just because all hands? Absolutely not. And the comments, which was, again, hopeful that I could see that from Trinidad and Tobago, the comments under that news story said, if you really did not appreciate his comments, then you would sever ties. Because there has to be a way of engagement. You have to be willing to say, this is our brand. This is how we engage with the public. This is what we stand for, and we will accept nothing less.
You see, if it was isolated, but that is the nature of the beast. You can't, and I will say political allies, if it is that you judge the persons by the people who will be around you. Show me your political allies and I'll tell you who you are. You can't be a man or a woman and you find a bottom or a pit bull and you put him on a leash and he bites people and then you say, well, it wasn't me. You have to take ownership and responsibility because you have brought him into your coalition of interests. And again, by her making that comment, so if thank God, if it is that Bin Laden or Ayatollah or Hitler was still alive and they were interested to join the coalition, you'll bring them in because you need all hands on deck. For every one vote he may bring in, you're going to lose 1,000. I have been bombarded with those floating voters, those independent thinkers who are saying, anytime people like that are around, Gary, do not call us to come on board. But again, sometimes people want individuals like that to be a pit bull to do the nastiest things on your behalf. That is not the type of politics we want. That is not the type of politics we're looking for.
I'm so happy to hear. Timothy Hamilsmith did say that you guys tried to reach out to Michaela and thus far have been unsuccessful. Can you confirm that?
Well, hasn't been not by myself, but I think others may have. I don't think that that she may be interested. But what I'm also stating is that we shouldn't go around begging. People will be fully aware of what we are doing. And if it is you're interested, give us a call. And we are building this to the point that this is going to be a very powerful alliance. As I said, what caused the collapse of 2010 to 2015 was UNC 21 seats. And that was not a coalition government. A coalition government is when you have different political parties that have to unite to get the majority in parliament. The UNC had 21. It was a UNC government supported by the 6 UP seats. So they didn't need
proportional representation.
Correct. So
yes.
we are going to make sure that this thing is cemented and binded. And it is not a case of bringing people together, get Barry to line up people and do a photo op. That's not a coalition of interest.
Without a media release at 3 p.m. and then remember, you need to call persons to come for the photo op.
But let me quickly add, Marsha, what I again find very interesting, because I am here willing to serve my country in any form or fashion. But Kamala Prasad-Bissessar did say that the NTA and the UNC, we have the same direction. But she's saying that she's just concerned about me making comments about Julian John. Understandable, because you're defending your deputy political leader. But my comment was, I am concerned that she continues to believe that the UNC can win alone. And by her doing that, it is causing the UNC to go in the wrong direction, because the UNC has never been able to win alone in 36 years in a 3-horse race. And that was deemed as being unacceptable. But now Kamala Prasad-Bissessar has done exactly what I was saying about Julian John. So you're upset with me for speaking the truth. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have somebody next to you who has attacked you from Canal Kong, from saying all sorts of different things about you and your party every day for the last year, inclusive of stating he will do everything in his power to make sure you never get in government. And sometimes people do not understand Trojan horses. They should just take a read and understand what a Trojan horse is, and they will understand exactly why such individuals are trying to infiltrate into the UNC. And then 2 weeks before the general election, you're going to hear exactly what the plan was.
Well, I have asked Philip Alexander publicly, and persons, you know that he is not someone I am used to speaking about. I don't generally take him on, but because you are now aligned with the opposition leader, I consider that you can threaten our government in waiting. You can threaten the future of our country. You're no longer just, you could be in our Senate, you could be in our parliament. You can destabilize, and you use the right word, a Trojan horse. And I have asked Philip Alexander publicly. In fact, I sent him a voice note asking him to come on air. Let me interview him. He always says he wouldn't do a pre-recording. I said, it's live. I'm in Trinidad, not pre-recording. But, he backtracks.
He will never come. The biggest quarter bullies. He will never come. He will never come. He will never debate with me. He will always find an excuse. That is the way he is, because his power is behind a camera to say the nastiest things about people. And then when you challenge them, he will block you, he will duck you, because he can't debate. What he's good at is
but
to
I have
let
also asked him to be transparent and accountable. I have asked him if he has had meetings with a senior PNM minister. It's a yes or no question. And to hear you speak about this Trojan horse.
Yeah, but Marsha, in hindsight, I don't think he will really answer that question.
I understand in hindsight.
What did I say?
Nothing at all. I'm laughing at nothing.
Okay.
So I don't, David is my next guest here. I don't want to take away. We did that with Kirt, and I want to make sure. Is Kyle there?
No, he is not as yet.
So now that so Gary is ready to leave. And y'all are just gonna leave me by myself. Wait, do I have any other questions? Let me make sure. Okay, really? Okay, no, I don't have.
You don't have any more questions for me, right?
I have one more. I actually have one more statement. This statement is actually coming from a media personality. I won't call names, but someone from the Newsday is tuned in and saying, once y'all do join UNC.
Okay, so let me answer that. Now, I have been bombarded with those as well, but let me clarify again. Everywhere I go, I went to Tobago, Juve, took about 500 photos, and everything you got. Gary, we wanted to come back as security minister, as commissioner. Don't join the UNC, join the PNM, join with the UNC. Everyone has an opinion, but I deal with the data, and this is fact. The not joining with the UNC, we have seen what has happened with those bridge constituency parties in 1981 with the ONR, 91,000 votes. It caused the PNM to win by a larger margin. 1991, the NAR, of which Kamala Prasad-Bissessar was part of. So she was part of a pop-up party, by the way, that I think she may have lost the deposit even. And it caused the PNM from a 33-3 to come back to get in government. And then 2007. So even if it is that we're there, what is it, would you prefer for us to take the chance and have a repeat of 81, 91, and 2007, or be guaranteed that persons and that will be in the political parties of Hope, COP, and NTA will be part of the next government to make this a better country? Are you willing to restrict?
You want my opinion?
Yes, please.
Well, one, I think that the numbers may be bigger than 2007.
It is. It increases.
You're quite correct.
Yeah, I think that the UNC might be far weaker than 2007.
Yes.
So personally, but you know, we'll see what the data says. I think, and I'm telling you, maybe the data says that now, but I think just by what I'm seeing coming through to my phone with my small following, I mean, can you imagine this news going on a front page headline? I am suggesting to you that this becomes PAN versus UNC and PNM in one. The alliance is actually PNM/UNC versus PAN. It is old politics versus new politics. That is my take on it. I do believe that it's not a 3-horse race. I think what you're looking at is actually a NAR-UNC situation where Kamala Persad-Bissessar said, no, thank you, I will go with NAR. I do not believe that UNC can win anything. And then, you know, she loses to UNC. Am I willing to risk a third PNM term? I am not sure, to be honest. But I don't think the country wants any alliance that is out of just beating the PNM. Yeah,
you're correct about that.
Anytime we sense that,
Gentle people, can I ask a question? There are lots of people like me who sit on the fence. We are the deciding factor in any election. All right, we've been hearing a lot of bantering from the new parties. We are hearing what the UNC has to say. We are hearing what the PNM has to say. How can you guys convince someone like me or people like me to vote? Because people like me, I'm seeing it all on the social media pages and all of that, that they're not comfortable with what is happening now. And we are very interested in what new politics, as Marsha said, has to offer. Now, how are you guys going to convince me with all the bantering around?
You want to take that, or you want me to answer?
Gary, you answer me, man.
Okay, sure. And it's straightforward. The UNC and the PNM has 200,000 supporters, regardless of what. Their political leader can go downtown and shoot someone in cold blood. They're going to vote blindly. That is how it is. We have to accept it. However, so they start off with a 200,000 head start, but they're 100 to 150,000, and it may have increased because no one under the age of 35 ever had a third choice, because the last time you had that opportunity was 17 years ago. So anyone from 18 to 35 who's eligible to vote this time around never had a third choice. And most of the time, it has been younger persons where mommy and daddy saying this is a PNM or UNC house, and the children are now saying, don't get tied up. In fact, they educate their parents now to say that doesn't make sense. You could be like me and foolishly support Manchester United till you die and suffer. But you could do it with a sporting team. You don't do it with politics where your lives will be at stake. What we are doing is not putting the hatred and the bitterness or the animosity. We are showing policies, plans, program, the political will. And those are the things the floating voters, persons like your good self. So I'll give you a simple example in 15 seconds. The most critical concern of the country right now is national security. You are concerned that your wife could be killed, your daughter could be kidnapped, your son could be robbed. Which of the three you feel will be the better option to make you safer? The PNM and the UNC combined with all of their experts don't have 5% of what we have to be able to contribute. We have the track record. We are showing what we can do. So we are showing that we can make Trinidad and Tobago safe again. So you want to make your family safer, you want to secure your assets, that should be your focus, not a PNM till I die and I'm born at UNC and I'm going to die at UNC. So that's just one simple example. And we're going to do the same thing to health, education, the economy, sport. And we are showing these policies how it is to be done. Because not by somebody just coming up with ideas. Like an example, let me just quickly add, the person who Kamala says she's still in an alliance. He has never held a post. He has never achieved anything. He has never performed. But what he does is state ideas because he could sell ice to the Eskimos. But you need to look at persons such as Timothy Hamilspit, Prakash Ramadan, myself, and others who have a track record of performance and delivery. And again, with integrity, we intend to show to the country that we can be able to make this country a better country.
Thank you
David,
so much.
I'm starting my poll, David, because
Yes.
Gary has already said that PAN will not be reaching out to the UNC. PAN is going to be building. The door is open to the UNC, which is a real power move, by the way. They ain't going cap in hand to no UNC. I love it already. But David, let me ask, poll. This is my poll, and I'm going to do my poll. Should PAN join with the UNC?
No.
First, no. Now because I have another state question, so I'm gonna bring that from this is coming from the YouTube, but I have my question. I don't think this. Well, I have a comment before the question. I don't think Michaela Pandey and the UNC and Kamala Persad-Bissessor, not UNC. I don't think Michaela and Kamala will work together. That's one. Do you agree with that? Yes or no?
Agreed.
Right. Good. So I also think that Michaela has the potential to pull some of UNC's 200,000. Agreed or don't agree?
Agreed also.
Agreed also. So if you had to choose, Gary, it's very hypothetical because at the end of the day, neither of them have reached out, right? And in fact, Mr. Hammersmith did say that he did reach out and he was unable to get her at the table. But I think headline news tomorrow will be this, and I think we will see a wave of support. And you know the saying, build it and they shall come. So I am hoping that Michaela Pandey will heed the call to join the table. Will you choose, or who do you think, David, that PAN should choose, Michaela or Kamala?
Without a doubt, Michaela.
So we have our polls, right? I'm going to get that poll going, and so that Gary can have data going forward. Here's a next question. What about the rumor that Quito is backing down and there would be a new political leader for the PNM? How do you all think this plays into the political arena for next year? This is actually a young person who's very interested in politics. Gary.
Yeah, well, again, it will be a brilliant move on their part. I think the country looks at the PNM and say, listen, Heinz scratch, Imbert scratch, Kirt. Yeah, I could probably look to swing and give them a second chance if I look at who's on the other side. That is possible. But with us coming in there, people are going to remember that after 10 years of suffering, 10 years, it has been, I think it's been the worst government this country has ever seen over the last 5 years. So just remove it. It's like you have a football side, you have 22 people, you have 11 and 11 on the bench, and you drop 3. You're still going to get another, you still have 90 that's still going to be there on that football team, even though you take away 1 or 2.
And the coach in the background that's really pulling the strings.
Correct. So I don't think the country is going to buy into that. It's not that they want to PNM removed because of their hatred for Keith Rowley, but they are fed up of the failure. And if they see that we can provide something to give to them, and so it's not, I think the UNC's expectation was that the country hates the PNM so much, they will vote them out and vote for the UNC. Not going to happen. That corridor will never vote for the UNC.
Has not worked for us, Gary. We need to mature as a country. We need to vote in. You know, and Timothy Hamilton said that today. We need to stop. It's not a failure issue. It's a success issue. You know, so we need to this culture of voting out. We fed up here, so we go just take the lesser of 2 evils. This athlete's mentality. Oh my gosh, we need to move away from that. We need somebody that we can vote in, that we can see your policies. We can, you know, as I said, you've breathed some fresh air, some hope into the country today. I do hope that the media houses will pick this up, maybe call you directly for their own quotations, and you know, hopefully we could see it on the front page news tomorrow. Hopefully CNC3 could carry it as a poll, because I know
you got the exclusive about the new leadership of the GOP.
Yes, I did. I got some breaking news today. I don't think PAN was out there before today either.
No, we kept that inside because we were trying to think of a name, because what we don't want to do is to confuse the country. We do not know if going into the election, if different political parties will continue to keep their symbol going into their constituencies. the NT, I mean, we already have pushed forward with about 3, and I think that's where the UNC got a little upset. But I was all, you don't want to talk to me? If you don't appreciate what I bring to the table, I'm not going to eat with you. And I started moving forward and letting them know, Gary Griffith is going up for St. Joseph. You don't have a snowball chance in hell to win St. Joseph if I'm going up for St. Joseph. Dr. Kevin Sarani, San Fernando West, same thing. Christina Walu, Sangre Grande. So the 3 seats that are
screening for Sangre Grande today, actually.
Yeah. So you don't want to work with us? Okay, well, let's rumble.
Yeah, which is fine, which is fair. You have to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, Gary, so I'm going off on the Batmobile to go and play football now.
Yes, no problem. Tell Mark hello for me.
Well, okay.
Bye. Thanks so much, Batman. Hi, Kyle. Oh, Kyle, are you there? Just about 15 minutes left. Kyle, you have to... I was about to say you have to be as exciting as the rest of my show, but you just never feel. My brooch, I don't feel like y'all could see my brooch. I didn't come as big as you. My brooch was so neat and I feel like you can't see it.
It is my office Christmas party today, Marsha.
Gosh, so we did not tell Gary or anybody Merry Christmas and all of
that. If I say that, if I invite people on this platform, 100,000 people are gonna end up by my office, right? So
I understand. Did you hear the news, Kyle?
No, I've been frolicking and I've just logged on.
So do you want the news? Yes, because we have 15 minutes. So you're going to have to speak real fast. I don't know.
Right, let's go.
Okay, but the news is so good. So I don't know. I feel like we should just scrap that Attorney General. I think you did a TikTok today.
I did.
Yeah, so, maybe what we could do is direct people to that TikTok. Although, I love to hear you talk about issues. But I don't know if you know. One, Timothy Hammersmith has announced that for months now, because Philip Alexander said that the Guardian media story was fake news and that there's no meeting and of NTA and COP and whatnot. So Timothy Hammersmith announced that today they have been meeting for months on end, every Saturday for 3 hours, working out a policy document, making sure that they all have the same vision and mission, and it's a well organized meeting, meeting of the minds, including, Gary added unions today. Timothy spoke about NGOs and religious organizations and stuff like that. So it seems to be a big deal. It's they kept the name. It's just a name. It's an umbrella. It's Progressive Alliance Network. Gary was saying, they didn't know if necessarily to put it publicly.
There have been meetings between who exactly?
NTA, COP, and Hope. And yes, so so they are working together. They have put together a policy document, which will become their manifesto. And the second breaking news is that Prakash Ramada has assumed interim political leadership of the COP.
Oh wow! I thought that was a rumor. I heard it bandied about, but
no, well, it was said on the show today. So we have Gary, Prakash, and Timothy on the table working things out. Timothy Hammersmith said that he did reach out to Michaela Pandey. Unfortunately, right now she's not on the table. But they are convinced that with the momentum, she will come. Mm-hmm. Gary has said that they will not be reaching out to UNC. There's no cap in hand. This is not 2010. Right. This is not 2000, and this is not you gather people for a photo op, and we really are just there to make it look like something. Yeah. They are certainly operating from a position of power, it would seem. So as Timothy said, the door is open. They can come. The door is open. We've asked David, I like to ask David, who never shows his face, but David has said that he does not believe that. So I'm starting a poll, by the way. I'm hoping CNC3 and Newsday and Express will carry my poll. But David has said that he does not believe that PAN should join with the UNC.
The CAN, or you mean the new party? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a new party. You see,
Oh,
that's why they don't want us to say it.
right.
It's
the alliance
umbrella,
of,
the accommodation,
yeah. Right. Okay.
Yes. So and the second half of the poll was, we know that Michaela, well, and part of it too was poor Philip. They don't agree that he should be part of the coalition of interest. Gary said that at the end of the day, the opposition leader must take responsibility for the things that come out of his mouth,
Right.
and it must affect the relationship. If it doesn't affect the relationship, then it says something about you. So there's that. And right. And so the final part of the poll was, if Michaela and Kamala cannot work together, should the alliance, the PAN alliance, should they choose Michaela or Kamala? And David said Kamala. I mean, Michaela. He did not say Kamala. He said Michaela. He said the country wants fresh. The country does not want old. And they say PNM and UNC as the same. And so they don't want PNM or UNC. And he is, so he thinks that Michaela will bring UNC's votes that Gary talking about. And he doesn't want Kamala. So that's what David is saying. So we're going to run a poll, Kyle.
Run the poll. I think you should run the poll.
Are you willing to speak? I mean, you're a UNC member.
I am a UNC member. Proud
Are you
UNC
willing
member.
to be part of this poll publicly?
Very proud UNC member. I am, let's put it like this. Democracy needs as much participation as possible in the political process. And if there are those such as Mr. Griffith, Mr. Ramada, and Mr. Hammersmith who feel that they want to create a vehicle so as to engage more people in the political process, or even offer another alternative in terms of politics, or I know some people get offended when you say alternative, but to offer the solutions that they think the country requires, but then so be it. That is part of the political process. As of now, as a UNC member, I understand the philosophies of the UNC that attract me. We are a party of the rule of law. We are a party of social equity. We are a party of bringing people up. And I don't just say that as taglines. Some of the, and you would know that too, Marsha, some of the policies that the UNC have implemented over the years in both stints in government have been to the benefit of the population, and they remain the core values, as far as I see it, of the United National Congress. Like you, I have some concerns with respect to some of the decisions and some of the personnel in the United National Congress, but that does not mean that the entire foundation of the UNC has been, eschewed and thrown out. I remember Mr. Pandey once saying, "You could be mad with the pastor, but don't not come to church." Right? That is not reason to stay out of church. And that might be it. I still believe in the house of the rising sun.
But it may be a reason to find a new church.
It possibly, as long as the Bible that we're reading from remains the one that we hold true and dare, to use your analogy.
But the UNC has a serious problem with the Constitution. The present leadership. And the thing about it is, Kyle, do we want, so I mean, I don't want to speak on both sides of my mouth, right? Because on one side, I don't want to just do anything just to get PNM out. But can the UNC in its present state, can a Kamala-led UNC, will they in fact do more damage? What is the opposite of goodwill, Kyle? I have no idea. I should Google it.
I mean, at this point, of course, I ran in an internal. I felt
and if your team had won, then we may not have even been having this conversation.
But I also have to respect the will of the membership. So be it.
I agree as well. But unfortunately, the 10,000 UNC members, if so much, that voted for the present leadership is not enough to put us into government.
Maybe not so, but I've always said the art of politics is about persuasion. So we need to reconcile the resources we have, both intellectual, social, capital, marshal it at an election, and try to persuade the population to come to our side. I didn't say it's going to be easy. It's never easy to beat the PNM. But as of now, you've just said that there have been these ruling meetings among the gentlemen that you named to have this policy. Well, I need to see the policy document. I can tell you what some of the UNC policies are. I can tell you what some of the UNC policies that have been implemented in the past are and that are likely to be implemented in the future. I don't know what this alliance, with the greatest of respect to them, I don't know what their policies are as yet. It may be that they have a document that is extremely attractive and they have and they attract persons who I feel confident in that can get the job done. But why not also seek a meeting with the United National Congress, who is also, I would say, the major opposition party?
Well, they have said the door is open. So I would suggest that maybe the opposition leader should seek a meeting with them, because there has to be some humility. Well, at the end of the day, and that is the reality, Kyle, that we have to face. Yes. If the UNC members are interested in ever coming out of opposition, there has to be a willingness to be truthful to oneself, to be able to say, listen, as it is right now, we are looking at a third term in opposition. And we can say that we are the second party, and so you need to come to us. And then because while I consider myself a UNC member, I have not been quiet about saying that the UNC does not represent me. I don't feel that way. I definitely feel more, Timothy Hamel-Smith calls the 23% of the unrepresented population. I would consider myself as someone who falls into the 23% of the unrepresented population, right? And in speaking to Timothy, there was a lot that I heard from him. Gary would have been part of the UNC, and we have to admit that there is not a real space for us to voice our concerns. If we live in Diego Martin, the truth is there is not a real space. There is not. Our constituencies don't seem to matter. That is how we feel. And the UNC either has to be prepared to hear that. There has to be some level of humility to say, listen, we hear you and we are prepared to work with you, rather than, well, we have these seats, and if you want them, you have to come cap in hand. And so, I mean, and that's why I said, there has to be a poll. Because the numbers in 2007, are bigger. That 23% number, they're bigger. And the UNC is weaker than 2007. So, as I said, there was a time when Kamla Persad-Bissessar was NAR, and she didn't go to UNC. She said she will go as NAR, and she lost her deposit. And then NAR became no more, and UNC became. And I'm saying it live on air. As at right now, and worse yet with Michaela Pandey in the mix. I don't think the UNC is very powerful. The fact that we are having all of these conversations with the worst performing PNM government ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, the fact that UNC cannot, with their eyes closed, walk into a general election and win by themselves after 36 years, says something. And unless we do serious introspection, then we're facing a third term of PNM, and I don't think anybody wants to face that.
Right. So that was a lot. And as I said, I've just got the news, right? My position is this, Marsha, and I would reserve the right to comment further, so to speak, right? My position is this. I believe in the founding principles of United National Congress. I believe in the organization. It's an organization that I've been a part of since I was very young. That doesn't mean that I would never leave or would never think about leaving, but I remain a member of United National Congress, and I am loyal to the UNC at this point. In all of my discourse on internal campaigns and that kind of thing, that has been my constant position. The United National Congress has its challenges. I'm not pulling wool. You won't hear me running down the road saying we're sure to win. And when you ask me a question, I say we did it before and we did it again. I have never been about that kind of dialogue. I have always been someone who has try to bring about and activate actual solutions and policy to inform the United National Congress, first of all, because I speak in the party as much as I can and as much as those who are there to listen will listen. And I hope that it shapes some of the discourse coming out of the UNC. And I have seen it do that over the years. So I'm happy about that. When Messrs. Hamel-Smith, Mr. Griffith, and Mr. Ramada come with some concrete ideas and proposals, they will be subject to scrutiny. You know, in the American system, every time someone announces presidency, there's a bump. There's this big generation of excitement. And then after a while with scrutiny, things. So we must give them the same scrutiny that we're giving the United National Congress. Who are the other persons who are attached? What are their track records? What are they saying? Are they speaking? Or is it just going to be a triumvirate of the three that we've spoken about leading and hoping that their personalities pull them over the line? Fair, all is fair in politics. Have your party, but that should not prohibit a conversation from taking place between the United National Congress and any other political party or political alliance. I think there is great benefit, and I've said it before, in Mr. Griffith. I think a lot and have high regard for Mr. Ramada, and I also have a lot of respect for Mr. Hamel-Smith. But I also have a lot of respect for Ms. Prasad-Bissessar and all of her achievements over the years in politics. She's not a puppy in this. She knows, she has a lot of strategy. She's very knowledgeable. She's someone who you have to credit, for instance, for bringing about this whole issue that came about today with the bill. She was one of the first ones to point it out and take to the attack. So while I have criticisms of the United National Congress, the leadership, and Ms. Prasad-Bissessar at different times, that should not prevent a conversation from happening between everyone or among everyone, and let us see what can be achieved in order to remove, as you say, the PNM government, which has to be removed. Now, that does not mean compromising on principles. If Mr. Griffith and Mr. Hamel-Smith and Mr. Ramada are of the view that the UNC is not listening, they're not negotiating, their positions are too unflinching or unchanging, then you go it alone. But let's have the conversation. And I always learn. I have been in cases against very, very junior attorneys, sometimes 1 or 2 years call, right? And when we have a matter coming for trial, you know what I do? I pick up the phone and I call the attorney. I said, hi, my name is Tak, Mr. And they say, oh, Mr. Taklal Singh, nice to call. And I said, is there a way that we could find a solution to settle the matter before we go down the road of a contentious trial? I have no shame in that. There's no pride here when you're trying to negotiate a solution for people's lives and in the wider context, a solution for the country in terms of the politics. There should be no ego, there should be no pride. In fact, I think Ms. Prasad-Bissessar and Mr. Griffith should be racing each other to the phone after I said this, for them to pick up the phone and say, look, put ego aside, let's have a conversation, or Mr. Ramada or Mr. Hamel-Smith.
Well, but Gary has gone on public to say that he is happy to have conversation with her.
Right. So then it's up to, then I agree with you. Then
it's up to Kamala now to pick up the phone and, because she's the one who said that she's not prepared to talk to him at this time.
And I want to say that those kinds of positions can't help. I put that forward. Saying that you're closing the door to a conversation with persons, unless the person is very undesirable, and that is certainly not Mr. Griffith. I think he's very desirable on the other hand, right? For the country and for national security and for his ideas, etc. The door should not be closed to conversation. I would urge both parties to pick up the phone and to have a conversation and let us get an agreement on the table so that we can go forward next year into the election and win an election and take our country back from the chaos that is ensuing at this point in time.
I think that's the best way to end the year. This is our last show for the year.
Yes,
guys.
Merry Christmas to you and Merry Christmas to all of your viewers, and thank you for having me on. Next year is a political year, silly season, as they say. So yes. I will be a little more aggressive. Let me put it like that.
Okay, guys, have a wonderful season.
You too, Marsha. And be safe, be safe. Thank you, Kyle.
Yes, be safe. Okay, bye.
That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk right here at Power 102 Digital.